The High Court today acquitted and discharged former Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Ahmad Zahid Hamidi in 40 charges of receiving bribes in connection with the foreign visa system VLN. Judge Datuk Yazid Mustafa ruled that the prosecution had failed to establish a prima facie case against the UMNO president. He said witnesses who testified against Datuk Seri Dr. Zahid were not credible or trustworthy and their testimony could not be relied on. The judge said even though there were suggestions that Datuk Seri Dr. Zahid had received money, there was no sufficient evidence to prove it. Datuk Seri Dr. Zahid, 69, was charged with 33 counts of receiving bribes amounting to 13.56 million Singapore dollars or 44 million ringgit from Ultra Kerana Sdn Bhd UKSB during his tenure as Home Minister in order to extend the company's contract to continue operating the one-stop centre in China and the VLN. On another 7 counts, the Bagan Datuk Member of Parliament was charged with obtaining for himself 1,150,000 Singapore dollars, 3.125 million ringgit, 15,000 Swiss franc and 15,000 US dollars from the same company, which he knew had links with his official function. He was charged with committing all the offences at Seri Satria Precinct 16 Putrajaya and Country Heights, Kajang between October 2014 and March 2018. Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin is confident the Control of Tobacco Product and Smoking Bill 2022, which will be tabled at Dewan Rakyat next month after finalising several amendments, will receive the support of the majority of members of Parliament. He said the bill is still being reviewed and studied by a parliamentary select committee, and so far discussions are proceeding smoothly with committee members studying the proposed amendments. Elaborating further, Khairi said in principle the majority of the members of Parliament agreed with the bill. However, they have also asked for some amendments to be made so that enforcement powers are clarified, fines are clarified and so on. The bill, which among other things will prohibit the sale and use of any form of smoking material, including electronic cigarettes or vaping, to individuals born on 1st January 2007 onwards, was deemed to limit the freedom of choice by some members of Parliament after it was tabled in July. Khairi said the select committee has met 3 times and he will bring the streamlined bill to its meeting next week to be approved. When asked how the Health Ministry MOH dealt with the interests of the people and the industry regarding the importance of the bill, Khairi said the MOH has given explanations to professional bodies and non-governmental organisations through a series of engagements on why electronic cigarettes need to be regulated as tobacco products. The implementation of the large-scale Smart Paddy Field Smart SBB program by the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industries MAFI is capable of minimising the adverse impact of floods during the monsoon seasons. Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Ronald Kendi said the flooding may be inevitable, but efforts to minimise the adverse impact of the floods could be done through the coordination of paddy field management systems using a clustering approach which was proven efficient. He also said the government always provides allocation to help farmers to deal with disasters through the Rice Crop Disaster Fund (TBTP). The minister noted that the government has allocated 22 million ringgit specifically to the agricultural sector affected by natural disasters nationwide, but the funds distributed differ according to the seasons and impacts. He added that the aid is not only provided by the government to paddy farmers but also farmers of livestock and other crops, all in a bid to alleviate the burdens of those in the agro-food sectors. Datuk Seri Dr. Ronald said MAFI had also made early preparations to face the monsoon season expected at the end of this year by carrying out continuous monitoring of high-risk areas and enhancing the maintenance of its existing assets. Based on past experience, he said the ministry is better prepared this year in terms of control rooms and operations to reduce the impact on those involved in the food sector. The Ministry of Higher Education MOHE hopes the establishment of IPT, #KPT Prihatin Volunteer Brigade, will help in the country's preparedness to face disasters, especially floods, at any time. Its Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Noraini Ahmad said the establishment of the brigade will also help to coordinate volunteer activities and programs run by the Malaysian University Volunteer Council in all institutions of higher learning IPT across the country, so as to be more organised and orderly. She said flood incidents in several states at the end of last year proved how important the role of IPT student volunteers is, where more than 20,000 students were activated as volunteers in the flood relief mission at that time.
Tapi tahun ini kita mengharapkan lebih ramai lagi sukarelawan daripada kalangan pelajar-pelajar di IPT dapat menyertai brigade sukarelawan IPT ini. Selain daripada memberi bantuan, dia juga akan mendidik semangat supaya prihatin kepada masyarakat.
She was met after officiating the KPT Prihatin, Tuah University Technical Malaysia Melaka UTEM Sejahtera program together with Melaka Chief Minister Datuk Seri Sulaiman Mat Ali last night. Employers are advised to speed up on their end in the recruitment of foreign workers, as there are still delays by employers even though approvals have been given by the government. Human Resources Minister Datuk Seri M. Saravanan said the matter was the responsibility of the employers, as the government only played a role in resolving and giving permission to a quota of 400,000 to employers. Commenting further on the matter, the minister said the matter seems to give the impression that there is a problem at the ministry level, but there is no longer any issues at the ministry. He said at the ministry level, they only implement until the completion of the MOU between the source countries and the granting of quotas or approvals. The minister said that workers from Bangladesh and Indonesia are often chosen by employers due to language, religion and culture. However, he called on employers to also hire workers from other countries. On Wednesday, Datuk Seri Saravanan said the government had approved the official application of the Sri Lankan government to supply labour and applied for a quota of 10,000 workers following the economic crisis that is currently affecting the country. He said that so far the total number of agencies involved in the entry of the Sri Lankan workers has not yet been approved by the government, and the list of agencies must be registered with source country. Selected commuters using the Rapid KL public transportation can now conduct independent auditing on the Rapid KL train services main hub under Access or the Mystery Shopper Readiness and Station Standby Audit Committee. Transport Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Wee Ka Siong said selected volunteers, after registering using the Pulse application, can proceed to audit the services at LRT, MRT and monorail and bus rapid transit BRT.
Bermaksud apa yang telah dinilai oleh station manager akan dilihat oleh satu lagi pasukan dalam organisasi yang sama, tetapi secara bebas tanpa memaklumkan kepada mereka bila dan apa yang mereka nak lihat. Dan setelah semua data ini dimasukkan dalam bekalan data, kita akan menggunakan mystery shoppers. Ini orang-orang awam yang kita gunakan untuk membantu kita membuat verifikasi sekali lagi daripada perspektif pengguna.
Speaking at a media conference on the Access program in Kuala Lumpur, the minister said their responses would help Rapid KL to improve its services for the comfort and convenience of all. Access involves the act of comprehensive quarterly self-audit by station managers at all 147 train stations and 10 bus hubs, focusing on cleanliness, access to facilities, lighting, facilities, signboards, lifts and escalators. The communications and multimedia (CNM) industry has contributed nearly 1.8 trillion ringgit, or 8.2% of Bursa Malaysia's total market capitalisation in 2021. According to the 2021 Industry Performance Report (IPR) issued by the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission (MCMC) recently, the CNM sector had remained competitive throughout last year despite the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Communications and Multimedia Minister Tan Sri Anwar Musa said the C&M industry generated a revenue of 48.25 billion ringgit in 2021 compared to 46.52 billion ringgit in the previous year. He said the country's telecommunications sector managed to fend off the impact of the pandemic due to the increased demand for connectivity as well as public and business dependence on communication services. Demand for both mobile and fixed broadband services was higher, which contributed to an overall increase in broadband subscriptions of 8.4% to 45.75 million in 2021. Meanwhile, streaming services continued to put pressure on the country's broadcasting sector, thus resulting in a decrease of the sector's revenue by 1.9% to 5.28 billion ringgit. The revenue of the postal and courier segment also decreased by 4.7% to 2.66 billion ringgit. The e-commerce sector saw an encouraging growth rate with the total expenditure increased by 10.7% to 28.5 billion ringgit. He said moving on to 2022, the rate of digital technology usage is expected to remain high with the shift to the use of technologies such as artificial intelligence, secure access service edge, multi-cloud and edge computing. The search and rescue SAR operation to locate 2 quarry workers buried in a rockfall at the quarry site in Kramat Pulai was called off yesterday after the discovery of clothing and fragments of human bones, including a second excavator, on Wednesday. Perak Police Chief Datuk Muhammad Yusri Hassan Basri, through a statement release, said all the bones were sent to the Forensic Department of Raja Permaisuri Bainun Hospital, HRPB, for autopsy and DNA testing to verify the identity of the skeletal remains. He said with the discovery of 2 machine wreckages, clothes and pieces of bone believed to belong to the 2 victims who were reported missing on 8th March, the SAR operation at the scene has been terminated. The operation led by Ipoh Police Chief Yahya Hassan was also assisted by 14 officers and personnel from the State Fire and Rescue JBPM Operations Division, as well as the Simpang Pulai Fire and Rescue Station, along with Police Corporation and the Perak Department of Minerals and Geoscience. Perak JBPM Director Azmi Osman was reported to have said that pieces of bones and clothes and the remains of an excavator were found by the SAR team on Tuesday. In the rockfall on 8th March, 2 quarry workers identified as Itam Lasso, 43, and Kyo Lucio Sun, 49, were buried under a rubble of rock debris. Coming up in our foreign segment, gunmen killed 10 people at pool hall in Mexico. An unbacked tribunal rejected an appeal by former Khmer Rouge leader Khieu Samphan upholding its final verdict of genocide conviction and a life sentence for the ousted regime's former president. The now 91-year-old Khieu Samphan was found guilty of genocide against the Vietnamese people and crimes against humanity by the Phnom Penh-based Extraordinary Chambers in the Courts of Cambodia, ECCC, in 2018. Most of the estimated 1.7 million victims of the 1975 to 79 regime died of starvation, torture, exhaustion, or disease in labor camps, or were bludgeoned to death during mass executions. The French-educated guerrilla leader has expressed regret over the years since the regime's fall, but has maintained that he was only a figurehead and knew nothing about the atrocities committed. He appealed his conviction on evidentiary and procedural grounds, saying the Cambodian people should know he was not to blame. Some survivors of the Khmer Rouge notorious Tuol Sleng prison, who watched a live broadcast of the court's announcement via a television monitor just outside the court, welcomed the decision. In 1998, Khieu Samphan and Non Cha, known as Pol Pot's right-hand man and brother number 2, defected from the Khmer Rouge and returned to Phnom Penh under a no-arrest guarantee. Just under a decade later, in 2007, the pair were arrested and charged under a UN-backed war crimes tribunal.
That the international community
World leaders at the United Nations called for Moscow to be held accountable for human rights violations in Ukraine as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov defended Moscow's war and accused its neighbor of committing atrocities. Addressing a meeting of the UN Security Council on atrocities committed in Ukraine since Russia's 24 February invasion, Lavrov accused Ukraine of creating threats against Russia's security and brazenly trampling the rights of Russians and Russian speakers in Ukraine. He said countries supplying weapons to Ukraine and training its soldiers were parties to the conflict, adding that the intentional fomenting of this conflict by the collective West remained unpunished. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, meanwhile, pledged that Washington would continue to support Ukraine to defend itself. Thousands have been killed and Ukrainian cities reduced to rubble since Russian forces invaded Ukraine in the biggest assault on an European state since World War II. The Security Council meeting yesterday took place during the annual gathering of world leaders for the UN General Assembly. The Council has been unable to take any meaningful action on Ukraine because Russia is a permanent veto-wielding member, along with the United States, France, Britain and China. Yesterday's meeting is at least the 20th time the Security Council has met on Ukraine this year. Armed attackers killed 10 people in a pool hall in an industrial region of central Mexico plagued by drug cartel-related violence. The massacre happened on Wednesday night in the municipality of Terima in Guanajuato state. According to the regional prosecutor's office, the bodies of 9 men were found at the scene and another man died in hospital. The governor of Guanajuato, Diego Shunhu Rodriguez, condemned what he called a cowardly attack and vowed to restore order. Guanajuato has become one of Mexico's most violent states due to a dispute between the Santa Rosa de Lima and Jalisco New Generation cartels, which fight for control of trafficking in drugs and stolen fuel. Since December 2006, when the government launched a controversial military anti-drug operation, Mexico has recorded more than 340,000 murders. Authorities have blamed most of the killings on organized crime. At least 34 migrants died when the boat they were traveling in sank off Syria's coast after departing from neighboring Lebanon. Syria's health ministry said in a statement 20 survivors were being treated in Basel Hospital in Tartus. Syrian authorities initially reported 15 dead before revising that figure to 28 and shortly afterwards revising up by a further 6. Tartus is the southernmost of Syria's main ports and lies little more than 50 kilometers north of the northern Lebanese port city of Tripoli. The statement published by the Syrian Transport Ministry said information gathered from survivors suggested the boat set off from Mnieh, a town just north of Tripoli. Lebanon last year saw a spike in the number of would-be migrants using its shores to attempt the perilous crossing in overcrowded boats to reach Europe. Many of those departing from Lebanon are Syrians, but the ever-worsening economic crisis has pushed growing numbers of Lebanese to also attempt the crossing. Coming up in sports, Harimau Malaya sink Thailand on penalties to reach Kings Cup final. Southeast Asian Games double medalist Jeanette Wong flew back all the way from Australia to represent Federal Territories in Sukma for the first time. The one-off trip certainly proved worthwhile when the 17-year-old inspired the Federal Territories to a clean sweep of 2 gold medals in the women's golf competition at the Subang National Golf Club. Jeanette closed with 2 under 70 to finish the 54-hole contest on 3 over 219, winning by 6 shots from Fong Ziyu of Selangor. Jocelyn Chi of Kedah's impressive 69 came a little too late as she settled for bronze on 226. Teaming up with Ng Jing Xuan and Victoria Tan, the trio bagged the team gold with a combined score of 14 over 446. Sarawak, without their star player, Mirabel Ting, who has just started college in the United States, came in a distant second on 467, while Kedah claimed bronze with 468. The men's competition saw the battle for individual and team titles go down the wire, with both events were decided via a playoff. Malcolm Ting of Sarawak parred the first extra hole to PIB Federal Territories Muhammad Iqmal Basri to the gold after both finished on matching 4 over 220 total in the regulation play. Selangor's Austin Gunn, Ajmal Amin, Pun Jahau and K. Rasri Kanses emerged the men's team champions after overcoming Lee Chong Lee, Muaz Nazeh, Nur Hakim, Nur Hadi and Said Nur Ismail Shah Said Hussein in the tiebreaker. The strategy of fielding two national players, Khairul Shazrim Shamsaimon and Megan Bejayin, pays off for Selangor when the state made a clean sweep of the two beach volleyball gold medals at the 20th Sukma. Khairul partnered Muhammad Fahmi Mazlan for Selangor A to take home the men's gold after trouncing Wilayah Persekutuan A represented by Al-Rashid Kungroy Rizwan Rahman 21-16, 21-16 at the beach volleyball court in Shah Alam, Selangor. Despite coming home from the 2021 Hanoi SEA Games empty-handed in May, Khairul said the experience gained at the biennial meet assisted him to get to the Sukma podium this time. Meanwhile, Megan, who paired Sin Sing Yi in the women's category for Selangor A, crushed Pulau Pinang A, comprising Mashitah Muhammad Nasir and Nur Aisha Iskandar, 21-14, 21-17. Megan said she ignored the doctor's orders to play in Sukma after suffering a right ankle injury in a training session last month. The 18-year-old private college student who is studying the American degree transfer program said she will rest for 3 months following the injury before resuming training. 4 Sarawakian boxers have made it to the finals in the 20th Malaysia Games Sukma after winning their respective categories at the futsal complex at Precinct 18 Putrajaya yesterday. Leading the charge for gold medals was Kilat Boy Delonil McClellan Bong in the men's 54-57 kilogram category, was followed by Muhammad Rafiq Murshidi in the 60-63.5 kilogram category, Jackson Chambai in the 48-51 kilogram category, and Muhammad Helmi Cheng Firdaus Cheng in the 67 kilogram category. Sarawak Amateur Boxing Association President Datuk Rahman Larry Wu, when interviewed, said he was very happy with the achievement and his earlier prediction that the squad would be able to spring surprises, and the Sukma had been correct. When met after the semi-finals bout, Datuk Rahman said their target was 1 gold, but with 4 boxers already in the finals, the target now may rise to 3 golds. Chef de mission for the Sarawak boxing squad, Datuk Hamzah Ibrahim, who was also at the venue to watch the matches, said he was also happy with the achievements of the state boxers. Malaysia beat Thailand 5-3 on penalties after a 1-1 draw during regulation play at the 700th anniversary of Chiang Mai Stadium in Thailand last night to move into the final of the 48th Kings Cup. Malaysia, who took the lead through Lavia Corbin Ong in the 32nd minute of the first half, conceded the equaliser well into injury time of the second half through Pansa Hamvibun, a result that saw both teams walking into the pitch again to settle the outcome through a penalty shootout. It was certainly a nail-biting penalty shootout, which saw both teams eager to win, but Malaysian goalkeeper Ahmad Shihan Hazmi Muhammad had other ideas when he pulled off a spectacular save from the Thai kicker Super Chok Sarachat, who was taking his team's 4th penalty. Corbin Ong, who had given Malaysia the lead and who had been the best player on the pitch throughout the match, stepped up to send the Thai keeper the wrong way to ensure victory. The squad under head coach Kim Pan-gon from South Korea saw Dion Leon Cools, Muhammad Shafiq Ahmad, Matthew Davies and Declan Lambert also making good their respective penalty kicks. In the final on Sunday, Malaysia will face Tajikistan, who beat Trinidad and Tobago in the other match. Malaysia has won the Kings Cup 4 times before, namely in 1972, 1976, 1977 and 1978. The loss yesterday was Thailand's second consecutive defeat to Malaysia after having lost in the World Cup 2022 Asia Cup 2023 qualifier in June last year. England seek to get their first win in the UEFA Nations Group of Death when they travel to Milan to face the European champions, Italy. Manager Gareth Southgate and his team held a training session on Thursday at Burton upon the Trent, where players performed a number of training exercises. The team finds itself with only 2 points from their first 4 games, currently bottom in a group that contains Italy and Germany, but seemingly miraculously topped by Hungary with 7 points in 4 games. England need a win in Milan to draw level with Italy, who currently have 5 points before their final fixture at home to Germany in order to have much hope of avoiding relegation into Nations League B. There were a number of talking points when Southgate named his England squad last week. It was said that the manager had shown too much loyalty to players who were out of form, but the England boss said he has his reasons for selecting those who have never let him down. The Nations League matches against Italy and Germany, while big games in their own right, carry an extra importance. They are the last games that England play before Southgate names his World Cup squad, and the threat of relegation to League B hangs over the team if they lose to Italy on Friday night. Meanwhile, Germany coach Hansi Flick called on his players to be courageous when they play Hungary in the Nations League tomorrow. Despite the absence of captain Manuel Neuer and midfielder Leon Goretzka, the pair were ruled out with COVID-19 infections. The Germans face Hungary in Leipzig before travelling to England next week. Hungary find themselves unlikely leaders after 4 games with 7 points, 1 ahead of Germany, 2 ahead of Italy and 5 points ahead of England, who sit bottom. Hungary coach Marco Rossi has so far tactically managed to set up his team intelligently, as they hardly leaves any room for the opponent to exploit. Flick said it will be important that Germany play courageously and offensively because striker Timo Werner praised Hungary as a very dangerous opponent with excellent players. Flick will start with Marc-Andre ter Stegen in goal against Hungary as he looks to fine-tune his team ahead of the World Cup, which starts in less than 2 months. 4-time world champions Germany are desperate to make amends following their shock first-round exit at the 2018 World Cup. And that concludes today's edition of Updates at Noon. In our top story, Datuk Sri Dr. Zahid walks free in foreign visa bribery case. Thank you. I'm Renee Fong. Stay tuned to TV2. Salam Keluarga Malaysia.